Hold on. Okay, it is March 12th. Oh my God, it's March. It's almost March Madness.
It
And
is.
it's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be exciting. We have a great guest today. We're gonna be talking about water. It's spring is on the horizon. There's maybe a little lagger of winter ruining people's vacations or outings, but excited about the weather. It's 81 degrees in Austin, Texas. And so before we get rolling here, we're going to have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
You're my angel. You're the girl of my dreams. I like to thank you for waiting patiently. That is home. That is home to stay.
All right. Johnny, you look inspired today.
I am inspired. I missed last time. I had my brothers and sisters come to Austin, Texas. Flew in from New Orleans, flew in from California, and flew in from Atlanta, and we brought Mardi Gras to my house. I had a full band on my deck, and we partied all night, and that's been good. It was good to have the family together. Us Louisiana folks, we kind of spread out everywhere, but we know that the source of our survival comes from the great city of New Orleans, with lots of culture, with lots of music, with the best food in the world, and the best American culture in the world. You know, Rhode Island has this European culture they consider American culture, but New Orleans has true American culture and true American food. Now, I love Rhode Island, don't get me wrong, but we don't want to confuse it with New
Okay,
Orleans.
Johnny,
And
Johnny, burying people above ground is not a culture.
well, it's a reality because if we did, we'd be drinking them. Otherwise, I've been doing good, and of course, economy is interesting to me. The what I find interesting is that with this administration, if you look at the globalist approach and what they want to do, the stock market is not relevant to them. They think it is a market of the wealthy, of the high tech, and that this same sector took American jobs out of America and took them overseas and created serfs in America, if you will, 52% with no future, the gig economy. And so they talk about bringing jobs back and having a long-term plan of, 10 years rather than a short-term plan from year to year. So I find that very, very interesting. So you would expect, based on my knowledge of economics and sociology and psychology and history, with history being the most important, I think you would expect, and it's going to be a big, big pill to swallow with this administration. And I think that you have two economies. One is based on the real economy of goods and services. So jobs are up because to 52% of the population, it's the jobs that count. It's what comes in every month. It's not like the wealth in the stock market who just sit there and watch their millions make dollars. So I think it's very, very interesting there. The other thing that I find extremely interesting, Andreas, is that, and we asked this question, is the center of benevolent activity moving from America to China? What China is doing with the southern hemisphere is very, very interesting. And I also think that Canada have sort of thrown out their chest and said, look, we'll do it ourselves. I think the world is reorganizing around in Europe what happened to the president in the White House. And I think it made the Europeans say what people have said a long time ago, to what extent should they defend themselves? So one of the questions you asked, with China moving to that role, and there's so much literature now, research literature, on the fact that China has really leaped over America in technology. If you look at the China building their own airplanes, they buy their own jets, it is well on It's well on target for them to build their own jets. It's well on target for the cities. And I think that with the first Trump administration, they shifted their products from America to the Southern Hemisphere. That is, as they look at Australia, as they look at Africa, as they look at Brazil and other kinds of things. And the theoretical question for us, I think, is that is the world really shifting? And so to me, that's a good academic question on the one hand, but for America, we still have to look at the entrepreneurs and also the self-employment, because to me, these are, as you know, these are the heroes in America. It's the people who provide the jobs and not the government per se, but the government can, of course, set the standards and put up all kind of barriers. So if you look at what's happening, the question is, as a professor, will I go for a grant from the Chinese government now? Why mess with America? If as a professor at the University of Texas and I want to do a grant on new technologies, can I present a grant to the National Science Foundation of China? The Chinese dream for, just like we have an American dream, the Chinese dream for Chinese in China, it has been realized in its own track. So these are kind of questions that bump up against Western civilization and not necessarily what we do in America, because Western civilization has been tied, of course, from the ancient Greeks to where we are. It was based on science. It was based on technology. And it was not based on good feelings, for example, of the East. That's everything from medicine to how the East thinks about medicine. And finally, remember that they said that the wise men came from the East. So history becomes very important. But at the very center of it all is who will control science and technology in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Llewellyn, what say you?
Good to see you, Llewellyn.
Come closer. Come closer.
The Trump slump is well underway, that some of the most devastating and damaging actions taken in the last 80 years are now being taken by the government under Donald Trump. You only need from history to look up two words, Smoot-Hawley, to see where tariffs get you. I've never seen a country that used tariffs to grow domestic industry that became anything but inefficient. The case in point is India. After Indian independence in 1947, they put in a regime of tariffs that held them back for decades, and it's only in recent times that they realized the error of that. It built up large, often family-controlled companies. It did not increase the wealth of the population, and those companies are not able to survive in a competitive world, which is a tragedy because the Indians are such gifted people. China has not yet surpassed the US in technology, but the huge cuts in funding being brought about by the Trump administration are going to put us behind. I was talking today to people who were suffering from cuts from the NIH. A company I work with has suffered tremendously from loss of research money. It is a precarious moment. All of the gains made in the last 80 years, and particularly in the liberal democracies with free trade works. Free trade has been the goal. It is proven that tariff protection, trade wars don't work. There's no evidence ever that they work, and an enormous amount of evidence that they do not work. So we're in a precarious position, and all of us are somewhat vulnerable, even if we don't realize it at the current moment.
All right. Well, let me change gears and get ready to shift to water. But before that, I want to update everybody on what's going on in the tech news. So TSMC apparently is looking to do joint ventures with Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom, as apparently, you saw the announcement, TSMC, the Taiwanese semiconductor company, is building a $100 billion facility in addition to the $30 billion facility in Arizona. And apparently, this is all a rush to basically relocate everything from Taiwan into the US, which is basically the tea leaves of what's going to happen with China taking over Taiwan. Uh, in addition to that, those news, Google is introducing new AI models with Gemini. If you haven't used it, you should try it. And then Gronk from XAI, which is Elon's company, you should try it as well. Meta is scheduled to release their first homegrown AI chip, and Meta is right now has the largest number of people using AI through Facebook. There is OpenAI is launching all kinds of new tools, and there's all kinds of things going on with commerce and cryptocurrency. The banking systems are getting ready for the future. And there is one thing that we talk a lot about beyond energy, and that is water. And water continues to be an incredible challenge, but there are many companies like 374 Water, who are really helping the journey. And so I'm glad that we have our guest today, Belton Copp, who's the Director of Business Operations at 374 Water. And 374 Water, it's a company that has a patented technology. They call it AIR SCWO. SCWO stands for supercritical water oxidation. And Belton should be able to give us a dissertation on the topic. But Belton, we're interested in learning from you what you guys are doing. I know you guys are publicly traded, doing really well. So welcome to the program.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you, John and Llewellyn, for having me.
So Belton, tell us a little bit about you, your role, and 374 Water. What do you guys do? What do you offer to the marketplace? Texas definitely needs water. California needs water. Many states on the West Coast are dry, needing water. And obviously, globally, water is the #1 issue in most countries as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Andres. So I'm as you mentioned, I'm the Director of Business Operations for the company. I'm one of several people responsible to make sure that we have an appropriate organization with adequate systems, the right people playing the right roles to take us where we want to go. We are ambitious in our goals, in our mission. We have a phenomenal product that is in the marketplace. And so being responsible for the business operations, it's my responsibility to make sure that we have an organization with the appropriate systems to get us to the top. You mentioned we are a public company. We are traded on the NASDAQ under the symbol SCWO, which we affectionately call SQO. So our product is known as Air SQO. And supercritical water oxidation is not something new. It's been around for decades, but it has been seen many issues in commercial settings, and we've solved many of those issues, many of those problems. We've come up with a very novel approach and novel design to a well-known technology, and we'll get into all of the fun details. But you mentioned different states. We are based in North Carolina. We were founded out of Duke University. We were having a conversation before I think we went live about philanthropy, and you know, even when we were live, John mentioned, does China become the center of beneficial activity? And what comes to mind for me is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and private philanthropy, which I don't think anybody holds a candle to what exists in the United States. That's where we received our initial seed funding as a research project when we were housed at Duke. And then eventually one of our co-founders, a brilliant professor, Mark DeSchuss, spun us out into 374 Water. So there's a little bit about who we are and kind of where we come from, but I'm excited to get into this conversation and share you everything I know.
All right, Johnny.
Yeah, I have. First of all, I'm impressed. I looked at your website with the relationship between research and where you are. That is what you've done. You've taken technology research from a university, and of course, you have applied it. But I want to have one burning question that's I've been working with on for 10 years with a friend of mine by the name of Ben Barnes. Yes, Texas needs water. It always dawned on us, and we tried to do this project, I don't know, 15 years ago. A lot of great resources run through pipes in America. We have petroleum going from Texas to California, from Oregon to Florida through pipes. And so we had this great idea that we would do the same thing with H2O, with water. Well, what would that look like? It would look just like petroleum pipes and other kind of things that move by pipes. So our vision was to have the water move from Louisiana, which is drowning in water, right, through a pipe structure that would feed Texas and maybe feed California as the hurricane comes in and water is needed. And this is what we found, Belton, was that in order to do that, we had to go through every county in the state of Texas to run the pipeline for them to approve it. So my first question is an elementary one. Why we don't have pipelines running all across America, taking water to where it is being purified and great research like yours to where it is needed?
John, I don't know that I'm smart enough to give you an intelligent answer on that, but I will try. The first thing I can say is we do. If you look at Colorado, there are pipelines running through the mountains, over the mountains, moving water from high reservoirs to the Front Range where the demand is high. They run into water rights issues and simple volume issues. I think the dumb answer is that no one's willing to pay $80 a barrel for water. There's this idea that water should be free, and I'm not here to say whether that's right or wrong. But there's two sides of water. There's the drinking water, potable water, fresh water that we consume, that our yards consume, that we interact with every day. There's also wastewater. This is what ends up in the septic systems, in the municipal sewage systems. Wastewater wastewater includes things like industrial wastewaters, any nasty sludge that is exiting a manufacturing facility, a processing facility, any liquid that that is really unpure, and that's a generous statement, is considered wastewater. That's really where we exist, and it's not too bold to say that we are a critical step in completing that loop, that cycle of water. We, in fact, process wastewater.
That's right.
And part of our, let's call it a product stream, out the other side of our machinery, of our technology, is clean, fresh water with some simple off-the-shelf purifying steps. You could make it potable, fit for consumption.
And I paid $5 for this at a Texas football game when it's hot.
I hope it was a good game. But to your question specifically, there are places where that have significant pipeline infrastructure for water specifically. But I think it comes down to a simple economics issue.
So what you're saying is that if you look at, we know what California has done, right, moving water, but there is no, because of cost, there's no systematic effort to move water where it is, in places where it is needed, say like a Texas, from a place like a Louisiana. There's no national policy. People argue over that because you're saying nobody's going to pay the cost for the movement of that water. Okay, my final question is this. When you look at, let's just call it the needs of water, and I look at a lot of quote, purification efforts, and as you would say, moving waste out of water. People are doing lots of that. Where does the research stands? How has it changed over the years? I know you got the petroleum stuff, you got water from petroleum, but as a research unit, what does the scientific research stand, and has it gotten to a standstill, or is it still moving?
I mean, I think, there are organizations that are always pushing research in water and wastewater forward. I mentioned Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? They, in, I believe, 2011 or 2013, contributed $5 million to the research that's eventually spawned this company, specifically around water and sanitation. Supercritical water oxidation is a means to clean, purify some of the most harmful wastewater streams that we know of, that we can find. Our technology has been proven to be very effective at that. So there's a number of issues. One, we are doing research daily, specifically to improve our commercialization, our growth as an organization, the product that we bring to market. Much of that research we make available for public consumption because it's important. It is important too, right? And private philanthropy, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I just continue to name them, but there are several others, are always pushing the envelope, pushing what's known around water and sanitation.
Okay, do we have any conflict between private ownership of land and public need for water, as we did in Texas in the 1870s, where the ranchers would fight over where the water would come from and who owns the water? So I know who owns the water in petroleum. Who owns the water in my ranch in Louisiana? Who owns that water? It's the same. I don't know anything about that. It's the same with water as it comes from, with other minerals. Who owns the water? So, and we know that in the 1800s there were lots of fights, right, over land rights and whether or not water could be utilized to go from one ranch to another. As cities became available, you had to use dams to bring water to Austin. Right now, we have a great dam in Austin for the Colorado River. All of those issues, which seem so ancient to many of us, do they still exist?
Belton?
Oh,
They do still
okay.
exist. Those, I spent a number of years on the West Coast in Oregon, and anywhere where you find an arid landscape, water wars are prevalent, from Eastern Oregon, Northern California, Eastern Washington, of course, the Rocky Mountains. Mostly it's a state by state issue, but then you find things like the Colorado River Agreement, which is under renegotiations, right, where they allocated certain volumes of water to upper basin states and lower basin states, and they simply over allocated respectively. Those issues are prevalent throughout the American West, and different countries have different approaches to water rights. Australia has a very novel approach that, frankly, we would benefit from incorporating to some degree. I don't propose that we change course entirely, but it's a constant issue. It's not one that we face in our business, because again, we are operating in largely private and municipal utilities spaces, including relationships with federal agencies. So we're not interacting with private water. We're interacting with disposal and wastewater waste streams.
Okay, thank you very much.
Llewellyn?
Set a whole slew of questions because I'm keenly interested in what you do, Belton. And I've been interested in wastewater for a very, very long time. As somebody mentioned, I come from Africa, and it's drought prone, and wastewater is very important. I understand that it's fairly easy with technology to take out the biological impediments in wastewater, that it gets a lot more difficult when we come to lifetime chemicals, rare metals, etc. Would that be a correct summation?
I think so, although I wouldn't say, Llewellyn, that it's easy to handle the organic matter and the biological matter either. Let me use a real world example that we participate in today. Municipal wastewater treatment facilities exist across the country. There are in excess of 16,000 wastewater treatment facilities in the United States. And they range from very small ones like I have here in Hillsborough, North Carolina, to absolutely enormous 200 to 300 million gallons per day facilities in Southern California or some of the larger municipalities around the country. There are more than 16,000 of these. They take in everything that goes down our drains, most everything that enters sewers and drain pipes, and process it. They do a phenomenal job at producing, on one end, a clean water stream, which they discharge into mostly surface waterways. And their other stream of waste is what is known as biosolids. And I think this is what you're speaking of, Llewellyn. It is largely undergoes biological processes, including digestion, to concentrate in many cases or reduce the overall volume of solids, of organic matter. You have the persistent issue of inorganics that don't get removed, as you mentioned. But even then, this is the waste stream from a wastewater facility. It is only about 2% solids. It is almost entirely water. And what happens to this? Very typically, it is land applied, right? They take it to agricultural fields and use it as fertilizers for non-human consumption for crops, cotton, feed for cattle, feed for pigs. You see places like Maine and the Midwest where that has presented some serious challenges around a class of chemicals generally colloquially known as forever chemicals, right? That is kind of in our common diction these days. Oftentimes it's disposed of at landfills. In South Carolina, this is an issue because the high water content leads to a lot of essentially instability in the landfills. So that is increasingly not an option. And in many cases, long trucking distances. Here in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, they truck all of their biosolids to Virginia. In Southern California, at least 50% of their biosolids goes to Arizona at enormous costs. So there are no good options to dispose of these biosolids. Our system does a phenomenal job at mineralizing biosolids. We have generally a 97% reduction in solids content. We don't need to dry it. That's a common step in operations. We don't need to do many of these kind of costly, including digestion, these costly processing steps to continue to condense the waste streams. So we're providing for municipalities a very simple on-site destruction solution where they're able to dispose of their organic materials and create either a mineral stream, which we can talk a little bit about. It poses some very interesting opportunities, but also a clean water stream, which may just connect us back to the top of the circle and some of the issues that we started with.
It's the nub of your technology, Belton.
Sorry, Llewellyn, say that again.
What is the nub of your technology? What is your technology?
So I've mentioned supercritical water oxidation a number of times, but let me describe what exactly that is. We understand water as existing in three phases: solids, ice; liquid, water; and gas, vapor. There is, in fact, a fourth phase of water, and that is supercritical water. that exists at high pressure and high temperature. It is a liquid that behaves like a gas. And so when you think of insolubles like oil and water as never mixing, under supercritical conditions, oil dissolves, organic matter dissolves. Now, when you add air, you have a very rapid, very complete oxidation process. What does that mean? That means any organic material, any chemical compound containing a carbon atom is reduced to its mineral state. That's an exothermic reaction that releases an enormous amount of heat energy, which we use to essentially perpetuate the reaction. So at very stable, we have very stable operating conditions when we are processing waste material. And as a result, out of essentially the tail end of our system, we get a clean water effluent that has minerals like fluoride that you see in your toothpaste, and which with very simple post-processing can be separated and upcycled however you want. But we also, at our current scale and projected at larger scales, produce an enormous amount of commercial heat value, which many of the, essentially our clients and our host facilities can make great use of.
Yeah.
Start your process. Is there a continuous need to provide energy, or does it become self-sustaining, which I think you said it does?
Right. So the answer is both. There is a continual need to provide energy, but it really becomes a question of scale. You can, and we've modeled, frankly, not far out at our 30-ton per day system, a net energy production. Now, that doesn't mean that it is separate from the grid. That doesn't mean that during startup and shutdown periods we don't consume energy. We certainly do. But at stable state, we can feed back into the grid. We can charge batteries. You can envision an electric vehicle port next to our processing systems to power electric vehicles. At scale, of a 30-ton system or even larger, we are a net producer of energy.
How do you get the water for the initiation to its temperature, and what is that temperature that creates supercritical water?
Well, that temperature is 374 degrees Celsius. That's where our name comes from. And the pressure that's about 705 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure is 221 bar. So we are talking very hot and very high pressure.
Is this a large machine? Is it a substantial piece of engineering to construct it? Does it take a lot of land?
It is highly engineered. Our AirSquo 6, which is our first commercial product, processes 6 wet tons per day. That's about 1,600 gallons per day. It is a single shipping container with a few kind of ancillary apparatus. It is highly engineered. In fact, this company is made up with dozens of people smarter than I am with engineering, chemical, and mechanical engineering backgrounds, including PhDs. But the goal is to make it industrial enough for it to be operated at any industrial facility, be it a municipal wastewater plant or a plastics manufacturer or anything of that sort. Does that answer your question, Lula?
Very much so. I have a follow-up, a final one. When you're spreading the processed solids as a fertilizer, there are still traces of inorganics in it. Will that get into the food chain if you go from, say, cotton to corn at a later date, or can it get into the food chain if you're using it as animal feed, which is an option?
Those are great questions and great considerations. To be perfectly clear, we do not land apply any of our effluent. All of our mineral effluent is disposed of otherwise. But to answer your question more broadly, when you see biosolids traditionally land applied, absolutely. The answer is absolutely yes. You see the uptake of forever chemicals, the classes of PFAS and PFOAs brought into the food chain. That is unavoidable with the broadcasting of biosolids. Our system, and there was a press release that we put out recently that we did in partnership with the Department of Defense and Arcadis, showed a better than 99.9999% reduction in PFAS through our process. So first, we're not doing any land application for our effluent material. Second, the destruction and elimination efficiencies for our systems, our AirSquo system, for these forever chemicals is extraordinarily high.
So how expensive is this, Belton?
So we offer our product in a number of different ways. We have a client in Southern California, Orange County Sanitation District, that purchased a system outright with a services agreement. So they are buying a system. I believe our AirSquo 6, let's call it MSRP, is in the $5 million range. That's 6 wet tons per day. That's a single shipping container. We are negotiating contracts for what we call an AirSquo 30, which is 30 wet tons per day. That would address more than half of the wastewater treatment facilities in the United States. And then all the way up to AirSquo 100s, 100 plus tons per day. What we're also building out is a destruction services component where many of our industrial partners, many federal bases and facilities have stockpiles of waste that they need destroyed.
Right.
And so instead of buying a system, we offer waste destruction services where you bring it to us, or in some cases, we bring it to you. These systems are relatively mobile. We're also developing a smaller system that can be transported behind a heavy-duty pickup to be brought on site to a base, a military facility, or an industrial facility to do on-site processing. Now, those waste destruction services make sense for stockpiled wastes, of which there is just an enormous amount in the United States. And capital sales, of course, make sense for kind of permanent and long-term use. Now, we are early in, let's say, our market absorption. It's important for us to be on-site operating these systems right now for the time being. There's an enormous amount of continual R&D and engineering that goes on in the refinement of these commercial products, but it won't be long before the manpower required to operate them drops and training increases, and we see clients buying and operating them themselves.
Sure. Let me shed some light for our listeners and viewers. So, in addition to waste treatment, supercritical water oxidation is used for destroying, any kind of organic hazardous waste like PFAS and others, as Belton has illustrated. But it's also used in power generation. Supercritical steam cycles increases the efficiency for power plants, for example. It's used in chemical processing. It is used as a solvent and reaction medium in various chemical processes. And also it's used for material synthesis. Supercritical water can be used to synthesize nanomaterials with controlled properties. And interestingly enough, it's also used in food processing for certain food extractions. Really interesting. I had no idea that this was, so you guys make the equipment and you also do supercritical oxidation as a service.
That's right.
Yeah. So how big is the industry? Uh, and what do you think is gonna happen at some point with your opportunity? I mean, are you gonna be a billion-dollar company anytime soon, or what is the possibilities here? I mean, everybody uses water. Your water needs to be conserved, reused, dealt with. Wastewater needs to be turned into drinking water. There's all kinds of opportunities. So what are your thoughts on the opportunity of your equipment being deployed everywhere?
Well, I think, Andres, it goes without saying that we're incredibly bullish on our product in the marketplace. We view kind of the global waste destruction market as being in excess of 250 or $300 billion. We think about it in three different market verticals. I've mentioned municipal, which is generally wastewater and sanitation services. There's also municipal drinking water, which we are engaging with. The other vertical would be industrial. These are things like manufacturing, food processing. You've named a few of them. The third is federal and government engagement. I mentioned there are military bases across the country that have stockpiles of AFFF, which is aqueous film forming foam. This is a PFAS-based material used in firefighting. Every airport in the country, certainly commercial, has AFFF on base. They have contaminated soils. There is just an enormous amount of waste out there that cannot be disposed of. It needs to be destroyed. And that is the service we're offering. Our pipeline right now is in excess of $1.8 billion. And we see our revenue growing to more than $500 million within the next 5 years. So I am hopeful that we will break that $1 billion mark before I lose any more hair. But we are bullish on not just the marketplace and the demand for this type of product, but the product that we're bringing to market, which is
yeah, Belton, I'm very familiar with the cleanup for sites and cities. For example, if you need to build a hotel, on a lot in Waco, Texas, and Austin, Texas, then the site has to be verified in terms of different kind of pollutions. It's very, very true, of course, when we went from filling stations, many filling stations, if you will, where all the tanks were buried underground, and therefore all of the water became became polluted. Now, I think this is a bit, Andreas, like electricity. When we want clean water, we just want it to be there. We've never really stopped to think about where the cleanup comes from. And so it's not mutually exclusive. That is, I guess it's technology. It's not only about just cleaning and purifying, it's about what we drink also. I mean, you can't see it and so, if I go to Cleveland, Ohio, and the water looks like a beer when it comes out, right? I think, what is wrong with this water? So my question is, when you look at, let's just call it purification, and water is also included. Do you do anything for old, I don't know, gasoline tanks when we build a new, we build a new structure, and 60 years ago, there was a gas station on every corner. How do you measure that when you look at the relationship between real estate, what you're doing? Because I think that's a market also for you. Because in the past, you had to get it verified for the city. How does all of that work now?
That's a huge market, and we're exploring the fit, frankly, for our technology for some of those applications. John, to your point, the number of different wastes that we have successfully treated in our system is something like a dozen, right? This is everything from, I mentioned, biosolids and other industrial wastewaters to lithium battery waste, right? That produces a liquid waste stream. fat, oils, and grease from the oil industry, from food industry. There's just, enormous amounts of that. Firefighting foam, I've mentioned. The list goes on and on to pharmaceutical waste, munitions waste, things like landfill leachate, right? We know that landfills play an important role in kind of our waste treatment and our waste management in this country. They are generally lined, and that produces a liquid, a leachate. It's your garbage water, very plainly, full of chemicals that have leached through those landfills over decades, and it's a media that we process incredibly effectively. Foam fractionates, John, to your point, because you keep picking on wastewater, appropriately so. There are technologies out there like granulated activated carbon or ion exchange resins that do a really, really good job at cleaning water. But then you end up with a problem where you have a whole bunch of spent carbon or spent ion exchange resin that is saturated with whatever nasty chemicals you just pulled out of your drinking water. What do you do with that, right? Well, we destroy it, truly, and we give you back minerals and water. So there are different ways that our technology can fit into all of the cycles of water and wastewater across different market verticals, across different applications.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. Take a guess. What percentage of the world population have a concern with clean water, drinking water? What percentage of the world population have no concern, or really not concerned with clean water?
Everybody. I live in central North Carolina. I'm on a well. I live on an old organic fruits and vegetable farm. And when we bought our house and tested our well, it tested positive for fecal coliform. It's a 300-foot well, and everybody around us drinks it. Now, we were expecting a baby, and so we decided to put in a small in-house reverse osmosis system, but very few other people do that. Now, I am globally one of the most privileged people in the world, and I'm worrying about the water I drink. So when I say everybody, I mean everybody. And if you don't worry about it, it's typically because you're ill-informed, or you're just incredibly lucky.
Yeah. So is there, oh, go ahead, Llewellyn.
What percentage of the cost of your system can be offset 2%, 5%, 20% by electricity sales or heat sales for some other purpose?
Llewellyn, it's a good question, and I don't have a good answer for you. It's going to be largely determined by the geography, by the setting, by the appropriate use, right? So a utility in Southern California is already experiencing high energy costs, and so the offset is going to be much higher than, say, a utility here in Central North Carolina or in John's great state of Louisiana. So it's hard to put a single number or a generalization to something like that. I will say that it is part of the cost benefit analysis that we support for our clients when they're looking into our systems and engaging with us about purchasing or kind of employing 374 water for their waste destruction. I would say the greater cost reduction, the greater cost offset is around some of the direct costs, such as transportation, disposal, and you really can't ignore the cost of potential litigation. PFAS, especially here in North Carolina, but across the country, the cost of cleanup, cost of litigation for forever chemicals starts in the billions. And
your main impediment in selling your system, is it cost or is it social acceptance? or is it indifference?
I think it's market maturity. You know, we have found generally the early adopters, Orange County Sanitation District in Southern California, the city of Orlando in Florida, others in Minnesota and Maine. Those are on the municipal fronts. We have engaged with the Department of Defense and various other federal agencies to demonstrate the effectiveness. I just think it's market maturity, right? And understandably, markets are hesitant when new technology arrives on the scene. We are appropriately so, we believe, promising a whole lot of good stuff, and there's an amount of skepticism that comes with that. We don't see a lot of direct competition, although it's out there. There are other companies bringing supercritical water oxidation in a commercial product to the market. We think we are heads and tails above them in terms of our product and the service that we're providing the market. Lauren, I think it's a matter of time, and I'm not talking years, I'm talking months before you know, we see tremendous growth and broad acceptance for this as a commercial product.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Recyclers are looking to artificial intelligence to get very sophisticated recycling, so that you have very clever robots picking this out and picking that out. Does that have any role in your future? Will artificial intelligence affect your product and its efficiency and competence?
The simple answer is yes, right? In the same way that the internet upended every business that existed before it, artificial intelligence is going to become an indispensable part of our daily operations and our business operations. Exactly how is yet to be seen, and we are exploring different ways for that to be a tool that we use. I think what we're seeing, it's in its early days, to be perfectly honest, and it supports a lot of the work that we do, but we are nowhere near replacing our brilliant engineers, our brilliant business people with any form of artificial intelligence. It is an appropriate tool to employ as we continue to grow.
Thank you.
Yeah, what is your, you know, with all of there are lots of startups in this area, by the way. What does your competition landscape look like? I mean, when you have a board meeting and you're talking about your analysis of the industry, where do you stand? You can use it as a measure of income, a measure of revenue. Who are the big competitors? Let me put it another way. When you start rolling and a big competitor want to buy you, who is that person? What company is that? I mean,
well, they haven't come knocking yet, but I'll let you know when they do. You know, I think, John, the biggest.
Are there some? Are there some?
Oh, absolutely. There are. Well, I won't say that they're acquirers, but you know, we partner with some of the biggest organizations in water and wastewater management out there. Veolia, Xylem, Heritage Environmental, Hazen and Sawyer as an EPC firm. There are enormous organizations, including Louisville and many of the recyclers, that we are engaged in conversations with to explore different partnerships. We don't view those as competitive relationships. We view those as really symbiotic relationships. There are treatment and disposal facilities across the country managed by dozens of organizations. Some of them are huge, you know, many billion-dollar companies that would be great partners, not competitors. To your question specifically, I think the biggest competition is the status quo. It's inertia, it's impetus to move, and it takes very forward-thinking, brilliant business leaders, utility leaders to understand the challenges that they're facing today and understand the challenges that are almost imminent, and that, you know, we provide a very smooth off-ramp and transition to more seamless operations.
So I would imagine, Belton, that you know, primarily, you know, cities, utilities, industrial. What about the residential market? What about a mini Airsuco, or however you guys say
Air
it.
Squo.
Airsuco. What about the possibility of that?
You know, there are a lot of things that make smaller better and easier. We do have essentially a mobile lab system that is in a trailer that we are driving out to Colorado. I don't know exactly when to do some demonstrations out there. I think the smallest squo system I've ever heard of is the toilet on the International Space Station. That's a self-contained supercritical water oxidation system. We have toyed with the idea, and I think it's inevitable that we develop a scale appropriate for residential use, whether that's individual households or community. I'm not at a point of being able to determine, but that becomes an issue of cost. And as the technology matures, we absolutely will see the cost come down, and with it be able to develop different scales of the AirSquo systems.
Got it. Got it. So, Belton, I'm looking at the time here, and we are delighted that you spent some time with us today. Maybe we want to circle back with you in about, 6 months or beyond, maybe when you get closer to that $1 billion. But what's in front of you guys? In the next 6 months, you're releasing new products. So, what shows do you go to? What events? What's going on?
So let me start with the last one first. We are at all of the major water conferences in the United States. You can find our booths there. We are always at WEFTEC and have a strong presence there, perhaps the biggest conference for our industry. We show up to many smaller trade industries for federal relationships and industrial applications. The next 6 months, and I'll frankly expand that to the balance of 2025, is an enormous one, a very exciting one for us. Growth is going to be our marker for this year. We expect to see enormous fulfillment of contracts, successful demonstrations for federal and industrial partners. You will see us deploy to Orange County Sanitation District for a long residency in Southern California. We are already in Orlando. You will see us complete a contract, a waste destruction contract in Orlando. So there's a lot of interesting and exciting milestones in 2025. The best way to stay up to speed on our progress and our growth is on our website, 374water.com. We are active in releasing press releases on engagements and upcoming deployments, as well as our research and development, which we always make available.
Okay. Guys, final thoughts?
Yeah,
Anybody?
I think first of all, congratulations from coming out of Duke University. eBay came out of Stanford, Apple came out of Stanford, Microdata came out of University of Texas. Jim Tressard at National Instruments came out of University of Texas, and Stanford did everything in the world, and of course MIT and Rensselaer Institute has done tons of companies. So I think you're a beaming light for Duke University. They have not had a whole lot of companies that they produce that became billionaires.
I might beg to differ with that, John, but I appreciate being recognized as one of the successes to come out of Duke.
Yeah, one of the successes.
I think there are a lot
That's
of
not a
successes
basketball
that
player, I
come
might
out
add.
of Duke.
So I like, because it'll be hard to compete with Stanford and Texas and MIT, but Duke is doing pretty good. I want to congratulate you on that, and also congratulate you on moving the research from science and technology to the market. And I think that as universities are funded with billions and billions of dollars, it's important to get those great ideas out into the public. The last thing I think that your business model is one that people should know about. And like I said, it is like electricity. As long as the water is fine, everybody's good. But when it goes bad, everybody wants to know what's the science behind it. Obviously, you have the science behind it. And again, congratulations to Dookie I think that's absolutely fabulous, and keep doing great things.
Llewellyn, final thoughts?
I think it's excellent technology. I think it's needed. I think it's technology of its time, and I wish you great luck because you deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Llewellyn. Those are very kind words.
Hey, you know, Belton, we'll have you back. No worries. These guys will keep preparing and watching your journey.
We will. We will.
John, take us away.
I will. And I wanted just to say,
I've got to go, guys. Bye.
all
I've
right,
got to
take
go.
care. Man, in the Southland, there's a city way down on the river where the women are very pretty and all the men deliver. They got music playing all the time. See you down in New Orleans.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Belton, take care.
Belton, take
Thank
care.
you,
All the
John. Thank you,
best.
Andres.
Keep it going. Okay.
Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
Bye-bye.